This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into another live episode of the Pit Press. I am your host, Eric Moulton, and joined by some special guests tonight. We're going to jump in and talk about the Lobos' win over GCU this past week. UNM snaps a 2-game losing streak. Man, can't really get used to saying that, but lots to talk about. But before we get into more X's and O's type talk, I want to give a special shout out to some of our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Zach Brandt over at Capital Ford and Quick Lane of Santa Fe, the Southwest Spray Foam folks up in Santa Fe, and now our latest sponsor that sponsored the show. We want to thank the Bourbon House folks and Mark Travis. More to come on that. Looks like they're going to try to sponsor more watch party activity for Lobo away games. I think the first game we're going to look at doing is the away game at Fresno State on Saturday the 21st. So more information to come on that, but wanted to give them a special shout out for sponsoring the show. And without further ado, let's jump into some Lobo hoops. And on my right of the screen, the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs and a Lobo fan since 1970. And tonight, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ed Nunez. Ed, what's up, man? How you been?
You know what, Eric, I'm doing great, man. Just a lot of, we got a very special guest, and you'll introduce him in a minute. But had a couple of weeks break from Western, so Western New Mexico actually having their best season since 1993, 19-5 on the season, 10-3 in the conference. They closed with some tough games. But Coach Mark Bunker, the coach there, has a chance to get to 20 wins. And I don't know when the last time that's happened at Western. So, and then I'm, watching UNM, watching Highland, watching high school ball, going in with Kenny Thomas when I can, twice a week on his show Unfiltered. And sports is my retired life, man. And I'm very lucky doing the Pit Press with you and Nick. And, we've got a great team at the Pit Press. And thanks, like you said, to all our sponsors. We've come a long way since we first started this, so I'm really proud of what we've done.
Got to give you your flowers, Ed. We appreciate having you on, man, and we wouldn't get as far or be able to have half the show without you. Your knowledge, the Lobo Legend series, man, that's all you, for getting all the past former Lobos on the show. And then I know that you have a special announcement. We have a special guest coming back up. We haven't been able to do Road to the Pit live in a while, but I know you and Nick have a guest coming on tomorrow night. Do you want to share who that is?
It's going to be Abby Pavia, the sister of Diego Pavia. She had 39 points last night in Albuquerque High's 45-42 win, including the game-winning shot. So 39 points out of 45. And talked to her a little bit today. She's very anxious to come on. Got that moxie, that swag. She's only a freshman, and has that confidence that, certainly came a little bit from her older brother. But I mentioned to her today, I said, look, we know who your brother is. We respect him. We absolutely know who he is, but this is about you and about a chance to talk about Albuquerque High and where they're at. That was a key win against Los Lunas last night. So looking forward to having her on tomorrow night on Road to the Pit. We're finally able to get one in. It's been tough for us this season since we're all so busy. And, you've got kids. Nick's got kids. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow night at 8:30. She'll be our special guest.
Yeah, no, man, I'm pumped. I enjoy those high school stories, and there's a lot to be shared. There's a lot of talent here locally in New Mexico, and we don't get enough of it, man. But maybe that's a good transition to talk about our next guest. Coach Ray Rodriguez. Coach, welcome to the Pit Press. For folks that are tuning in that might be familiar with the name, he's got a lot of pedigree and been a coach for a very, very long time. Coaching experience spans over 40 total years. Started at Highland High School, where he was a coach from 1984 to 1994. 7 of those years, he was the head coach. After that, he ended up going out to the Seattle Redland area, coached at East Lake High School in Washington State for 4 years, and then ended up coming back to Albuquerque and coached some really good basketball teams at Cibola High School, was at Cibola for 24 years, and was part-time athletic director there too. So, man, I don't know a lot of people with that much coaching experience and that pedigree. You probably know a lot more about X's and O's than a lot of these people that come on our show combined. But Coach, thanks for joining us here in the Pit Press. Good evening. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. Part of that just means I'm old too, so managed to hang in there long enough to coach some really good kids, really good players. So I'm fortunate.
Yeah, well, I kind of want to stay right there before we start talking about Lobo basketball, but maybe just some of your most memorable or proud moments in your coaching career, coaching in Albuquerque and in New Mexico. Anything that kind of maybe jumps at you or kind of sticks with you in your coaching experience?
There's a lot. Most of it was just the connection you make with kids. You can go through the superstars, the Casey Cunninghams, the Jude Royballs, the Michael Monettes, the Sean Bakers, and there's a host of more kids, Tony Skinner, and but the connections you make each year with that specific group, and maybe the adjustments or different things you do with those kids and watch them grow. That's the special part. That's probably why I was able to be there for 35 years in total. So that, there's so many great moments. I mean, going to back-to-back state title games in with Highland, and we had some great kids there. We had, I think we had 7 or 8 kids that year with 4.0s, and you remember those types of things. We all know about, how good Sean Baker was, and some of the Harrigan brothers and things like that. But those other things, the kid who doesn't get recognized, that stands out a lot for me, because those really make your program. Those are program guys that do all the things you want them to do and set the tone for next year's group. So we had a lot of great groups like that at all 3 schools. So I'm really proud of that.
Ray, when you mentioned the groups at Highland, I actually was on your staff for a couple of years there, and I think of that 87 or 88 team with Ben McIver, Justin Moore, Terry Evans, Marvin Thomas, Martin Mays. That was a talented group, man. You had a lot of talented groups there, and you mentioned them, and you mentioned some of the players you coached. Preston Bungay, also another one that you mentioned at Cibola. And, when I was an official, I actually officiated some of your games, and it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. People try to always say I never, I was down the line with everybody, man. But I'd always get it from some of the coaches. Oh, you're giving it. I gave nobody no calls. I'd give nobody any calls. If Nick was on the bench, he'd get the same game. But you always did it with class. Of course, being you and I go back since we know each other since we were 12, man. For years we go back. And so, you're a dear, dear friend. You and your wife, Barbara, and your daughter, Lauren, a great family. And, I got to work with you the other night. We did Volcano Vista in Farmington. You were my color guy. And I think I know basketball. I know a lot of it. But when you were talking about 5 out and the way they need to move, there's things I learned from you and every color guy that we bring on that's coached as many years as you have. That's funny. John Romero, little comment there. am I responsible for some of your gray hairs as a referee, coach? And that I probably was, and a couple of them. But coach, if I go back to being a fan since 1970, and I do, and you and I saw each other at the pit many times during those years, man. You've been a fan as long as I have. You got a deep understanding of. I remember watching a game with you when the Lobos they had a boycott with Ricky Williams and Dale Slaughter, and you and I were watching right there at the ramp, man. And Steve Davis and Dan Davis had big games, and I don't know if you remember, all those guys got up to leave when the Lobos were going to win, and the pit turned around and booed them all, man. Booed every one of them, and they were deep in the pit. They had to go up stairs to leave, and the pit let them have it, man. So you and I go back many years. Tell us about your, before we get into the Lobos and against Grand Canyon, tell us about your earliest memory. Lobos used to come down to Whittier where we played at, right? They used to come down there. Tell us about your earliest memories of Lobo basketball.
Well, that was some of the highlights for us. We're playing on the blacktop out at Whittier Elementary School, and that venue soon became very popular for a lot of players around the city, both college and high school. There were nights when we were, if you lost, you were 4 or 5 games out to get back on the court, and there were some really good players. Johnny Brooks used to come, and guys from the Kurt that went to Albuquerque High. We got kids from all over the place, but we get some Lobos there as well. So that was an exciting time for me, growing up and getting a chance to play with guys who were, far above our level, but still gave us a shot at playing, but there was a lot of pressure back then when you played. You had to make open shots, and if you didn't, well, you didn't get picked up the next game. And so when you kind of cut your teeth as a player on in situations like that, it helps when you get into a high school game and there's some pressure. You kind of already been exposed to something like that. So that's the thing I enjoyed the most, and then, sneaking into Johnson Gym and getting a chance to play with some of the Lobos there back in the Michael Cooper days, even was special, and just we were in awe of all those guys. I mean, they were terrific teams back then, and we were always at the pit watching those games, and most of them were sellouts.
And that's back in the day when the mezzanine was still there and those media seats belonged to the students. And I never heard it louder. I don't care what anyone says, man. I never heard that place. I never heard it louder. You also played at Highland for the legendary Tom Hogue. And when your senior season, you guys had, I think, the best starting 5 in the city. And it was, you guys played Albuquerque High. You losing in the first round to Del Norte when you were a senior. And Victor White played for Del Norte. They had a good team. You guys had played them about 3 or 4 times, and Joe Bradley was an all-city guard that played with you. And I'm just giving people a background of how long you've been around, man, how long you've been around basketball. But I want to ask you, and Eric can jump in after this, but when I saw you, you've got a seat behind us on press row. I see you and your wife. You got season tickets. Again, we laid the backdrop of how long you've been a fan. When you saw Coach Olin, you saw Patino last year, and they went to this they won a first-round game, won 20 games 3 years in a row. And you saw Coach Olin, and you mentioned to me you really liked his system and the way he had things set up. Talk to us a little bit about what your first impression of Eric Olin and his system was.
Well, I think it's been said quite a bit, just how amazing. I saw the host on FS1 the other night that just said how amazing it is for him to bring in all new players. So first of all, he had to do a great job of scouting out what he needed where and how he wanted to set things up. And in some respects, that might have been really good for him. He got what he wanted for the most part, the parts in the right places. But if you think about the chemistry part, how could you really know how this chemistry was going to work out? And I think, just from my seat, it looks like they got great chemistry. There's nobody that's out there saying, I've got to get my points or I've got to get this playing time or whatever it is. It seems like he just has a bunch of guys who want to play for each other and play for him. And I think it's pretty amazing that he did that in year one. And, they lost 2 games at home in a row, tough games against very good opponents. But if you look at the overall picture, he's done an amazing job. putting that team together and then putting his system in so quickly. As a coach, I know how difficult that is.
Yeah, it started out with the new players, like you mentioned, and I think a lot of people were wondering, how the system would work, and they didn't look good. First couple of games that looked like they were struggling, and I think they've recovered since then. And you mentioned they're more of a team and play team concept, not one individual star. I think they showed that against Grand Canyon in their comeback win. Eric.
Yeah, well, let's get into that 70-64 win over GCU. Coach Rodriguez, I'm going to hand this first one over to you since you are our guest. But here's a game. Lobos come in. They're in a 2-game road slide. They went lost 2 straight games, but they end up going into GCU in a hostile environment. Right? They don't hold a ton of fans in that stadium, but it gets pretty wild. Their student section is loud. They're active. Everyone's kind of engaged in the game, but they go in and steal one on the road, true road win. I know it's a good quality win for the resume. They win that game 70-64. In this game, the Lobos jumped out right out of the gate, man. They come out, swing, throw the first punch. They're up 11-0 in the first 5 minutes of action. GCU went 0 for 9 for their first 9 shots. They couldn't find the bucket. You could tell they're just struggling offensively. And then down that stretch, the Lobos ended up extending their lead to 38-18, going up to 20 points. About 4 minutes left in that first half, GCU kind of goes on their own 7-0 run to trim that lead to 13 at halftime. And then you kind of feel like the game might have maybe changed momentum a little bit kind of going into half, and GCU just came out storming in that second half and got a lot more physical. Without kind of stealing too much thunder, I just wanted to get your overall impression of what you saw in Phoenix from this UNM basketball team.
Yeah, I think their start was extremely impressive, and it kind of made me feel like they knew they had to rebound from the last 2 losses at home. They knew how good GCU was at home. I mean, they'd beaten Utah State and San Diego State there, right? And so I think they came out and to use Mike Tyson's language, punched them in the mouth immediately. Part of that, what you mentioned, that 0-9 shooting start for GCU, I think the Lobos were up 4-0 without even shooting the ball. That kind of tells you how aggressive they were driving to the basket and in transition offense. They got up the floor, and so they were really attacking. I thought they did a terrific job of answering after the last 2 losses they had. Said a lot about their mental toughness, said a lot about their intent and what they wanted to do in this game, and felt like from the start they believed they could win in that environment.
And I'm going to hand it over to you next, but Coach Rodriguez did talk about maybe GCU kind of starting real sluggish, real cold on the offensive end. How much of that was attributed to the Lobos' defense? And the defense came in, it looked like they were sharp, they were crisp, they were communicating well. GCU just couldn't get any good looks. And then kind of through that first half, Coach Bryce Drew ended up having to use all 3 of his timeouts. And you could just tell GCU was never able to get comfortable on the offensive side. Talk to me about what you saw from the UNM defense in that first half.
Well, I think they were very connected defensively. They were in the gaps, cutting down on those driving lanes. And if you went fast forward to the second half, that kind of wasn't there in the first 10 minutes of the second half. The gaps were open, and GCU was getting downhill very easily and very aggressively. But I thought in the first half, the Lobos were really connected, covered the gaps well, closed out on the one man over, as you do on that pack line on the line, up the line defense. And I thought they were they were in sync on both ends of the floor, particularly in that first half. And I thought some of the shots they got offensively were as a result of great movement, great cutting, great replacement, great reads coming off screens, and great kick out passes. So I thought that they were just connected on both ends really nicely. But like anybody else, you get up a 20-point lead early or midway through the first half. It's tough to sustain that for the rest of the game. And I kind of felt like it was a tale of two halves. I thought Grand Canyon came out in the second half, much like the Lobos did in the first half to start the game and really flipped the script on them. But, overall, it was amazing that the Lobos hung in there and maybe made some defensive changes to keep them from getting downhill as much as they were.
Hey, Ed, I'm going to hand this next topic to you, but it seemed there in the first half that offensively UNM had all cylinders clicking, man. And one player that we've talked about a lot with just kind of Antonio Chol not really kind of getting his fingerprints on the game. First half, he finishes with 10 points. He knocks down 2 threes and just looked more assertive on the offensive side, maybe more aggressive attacking the basket. What did you see out of Antonio Chol that you liked?
Just what you said, the aggressiveness, the confidence. They ran, a couple of plays for him, and he shot with confidence. He could hit a mid-range. I was encouraged by that little turnaround mid-range on the left side, and I was like, okay. I think he even took it to the basket a couple of times. 5 of 5, like you mentioned, in the first half. And, I go back and look at the stats. He still only had 1 rebound. And I think they need, with a guy that size and that athletic, from your 3, you got to have at least, 3 to 5 rebounds a game, somebody with his ability. But I don't know. He still finished with 12. And I thought that was, that was a good sign for him, that he came out of that funk a little bit because he had been ineffective before that, But, Coach, I'm going to ask you, Luke Hopt had 30 points the game before. He had 30. And on Thursday, 0 points, 0 of 3, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. Now, Coach Olin calls him the connector. He does what it's needed. Were you surprised that there was that kind of offensive? Again, he's going to do what's needed. They won. You really can't say much about him. But were you surprised that there was a lack of offensive aggression from him, or did he just take what the defense gave him?
I think he did. I think he took what the defense gave him. I think just the monumental effort he had the game before may have been another reason. He may have been a little fatigued, and now his teammates picked him up. And like I mentioned before about the chemistry and the kind of the support system that this team has, that really bodes well for the Lobos when you can have that kind of a diverse change in performance and them still be successful. But he is the connector. He's the guy. He does all the intangibles. And against Boise, he happened to score a lot of points because he knew that's what was needed. But I think he also saw that Chol was playing well, and Hall was playing well, and Bouillon was playing well, and Albury was getting downhill quite a bit for him. So I think he kind of follows suit in that regard.
What has the conference done? Albury, the first part of the season, got to the rim. Coach Olin talks about rim pressure. They want to play with rim pressure. I thought the last couple of 5-6 games that they're defending him a lot better. They're making sure he doesn't penetrate to a certain point. He's been less effective, although 9 points the other night. He only took 3 shots, 1-of-1 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 4 turnovers. What's changed about? He was very effective early on. I don't know that he's been as effective lately as far as his role. When they signed him, I remember saying, God, that's a key signing for UNM because he played really well at Utah State and played very well early in the season. Less effective the last 4 or 5 games. I think defenses have concentrated on not letting him get to that rim pressure, drive, kick out. When things were working well, sometimes he'd overpenetrate a little bit, but he'd drive, kick out, boom, another extra pass. They move the defense, they rotate the ball, reverse the ball. One guy's got a good shot, makes it a better one with the ball reversals. What have you seen defenses do to him to limit his productivity the last couple of games?
Well, and I think they know that the Lobos are very effective when they can get 2 feet in the paint on penetration. They got that kick out option, and sometimes in that dribble drive, you get an easy pitch to Bouillon down low for an easy. So I think that's been a key thing for them. And the second time around in conference, people are going to take away some things that you do well individually. And that's something that they've done with Albury. I think he's encountered a lot of second level help and made things difficult for him, and he's turned the ball over. I think he needs to pick his spots more specifically now than he did in the first half of the conference season, because they're keying on that.
One more question for you, and I want to turn it back to Eric. But freshman Jake Hall, that he had 23 on 8 of 14 shooting, 4 or 5 from 3 with 4 rebounds, and a tough shot at the end. When they needed that shot on the baseline, man, he comes through with the, he's in great company among Lobo freshmen with Kenny Thomas, Spider Smith, Phil Smith. He's passed, the freshman all-time 3-point record. He's in the conference. He's surpassed that. Again, you and I talked about this. He's not going to wow you with athleticism or jumping ability. He gets to spots. He relocates. He uses angles. He reads picks very, very well. They run a lot of stuff for him. If he's not hitting on the wing, he'll relocate to the top of the key. Very smart player. You've seen a lot of Lobos, a lot of Lobo basketball. What's impressed you so much about him as a freshman?
Well, this may be high praise for Hall, but he reminds me of a smaller version of Larry Bird. Maybe a little bit better technique on his shot, but he can get his own shot, even though he's not that athletic guy. And like you mentioned, he reads screens very well. But I thought that last play that they ran and they cleared Scholl out from the corner and gave him the entire right side of the floor, it didn't involve another player, a screen. There's something to be said for that. Is now you're on an island as a defender, having to guard a kid that's pretty crafty and a great shooter, who doesn't need much space to get his shot off. I just thought that's amazing confidence, and for good reason that coach has in him. But I thought it was great that they didn't involve another offensive player that could help or double or make him give it up to somebody else that might have to take that shot. So I thought that worked out really well for him. And he reminds me a little bit of Larry Bird. He's pretty crafty. And you know what? He does a great job on defense. I think he swims screens better than anybody else on that team, which allows the Lobos not to have to help too much on those ball screens. So that goes a long way, as you know, that drop screen coverage that they've been utilizing most of the year kind of hurt them against Boise State, giving the pick and pop to the big who I think he shot 50% from 3. But
he did 5 of 10.
His ability to do that defensively, which I don't know if that gets talked about a lot, but he's pretty solid on the defensive end. He doesn't miss many assignments. I think he knows what his physical limitations are, and he utilizes those, at the highest level.
It's kind of funny you mentioned Larry Bird, and you're a big Celtics fan. I'm a big Lakers fan, but I love Larry Bird, man. I did, and the same thing was said about him. He's slow, he can't jump, but the angles, the ball fakes, his IQ when he would see someone open. I mean, he played with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, one of the greatest front lines in NBA history, but he was so smart. Played with Dennis Johnson. DJ was another good player that people forget about. They sleep on. DJ was really, really good. Danny Ainge was good. So when you talk about that, I think people look at a Jake Hall and they think, I'm going to lock him down. He can't. The guy is crafty. That shot Thursday night, you mentioned, clear out the floor. That's trust. That's confidence. That's swag, right? For a freshman, you're going to let him, man, that was huge, a huge shot. And New Mexico really needed that. They needed that win to get out of the doldrums of losing 2 close conference games. We'll go over the schedule here in a minute. They've got some tough games left, man. They've got some tough sledding ahead. But I think that's a great point about Jake Hall. You've seen a lot of Lobos, Ray, a lot of them, man. And you know what? He's, as a freshman, we're probably talking about one of the best freshmen we've seen here. And we mentioned Phil Smith. We mentioned Spider. Kenny, Kenny's one of the greatest Lobos there ever was. There's no doubt about it. So Jake Hall is in some elite company there. Eric?
Yeah, no, more just on Jake Hall. He had his 8th 20-point game of the season, doubling the previous UNM freshman record at 4. And then he was also in double figures for the 11th straight game, tied for the second longest streak ever by a UNM freshman. I think we're kind of beyond the conversation now of talking about Jake Hall in the Mountain West Freshman Player of the Year talk. I think this guy could potentially be a first-team All-Mountain West player just by what he's doing the performance, the weight that he's carrying on his load, night in and night out. He's the guy that teams are defensively targeting, and he's still finding his shot, right? Like Coach Rodriguez, you just talked about him not having some of the athletic attributes that some of the other players might have, the length. You talk about that last second shot, or the shot that put the Lobos up by 3 with 29 seconds left there in the second half. He was guarded by Jaden Henley, who has him at 6'6", 6'7", much stronger, more physical athlete, and he just kind of backed him down, and one quick step back was able to quick release that shot, and it went in. It looked so easy. And just for him to be able to go out down there, I think Larry Bird is an interesting comparison. Doesn't have the length, but he's definitely very crafty and can figure out his ways to get his shot. I mean, the possession before that step back jump shot, he also had that back down shot that he had there in the paint. He was backing down Owusu Anane, who is GCU's best defensive player. He's being talked about right now as the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, and he's coming in at 6'8", 6'9", 250 pounds. And Jake Hall's backing this guy down. You're talking about a guy that's 6'4", not going to jump over anybody. It's extremely impressive. I don't know if any names, maybe old UNM players that you've seen over the years as a true freshman coming in, is Jake Hall, I mean, one of the best freshmen ever to play at UNM?
He very likely could be. You talk, and there's a kind of an analogy you could look at, is that here's a guy who plays within himself, he knows what his abilities are. He's come up with some step backs, things like that he knows he would need to get shots off. But, I also saw him go up and dunk the ball with 2 hands in one of the Lobo games, off 2 feet. And that, people often said that about Larry Bird too. It's like, well, he's a little more athletic than what we think he is. But I think with Hall at a young age, he understands who he is and what he's capable of, and he stays within that. Oftentimes kids who are athletes who are much better athletes have a hard time doing that because they are such good athletes. That, I can get a shot anytime I want. I'm explosive, things like that. He's extremely efficient because of his ability to play within himself. And he knows who he is. He knows where his teammates are. He understands the offense at an extremely high level. So I think that's what makes him so effective as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the second half, and Coach Rodriguez, again, thank you for coming on with us on the Pit Press Live. But the elephant in the room, the conversation, right? The 20-point, I wouldn't call it a meltdown or a letdown, but to have a 20-point lead on the road kind of evaporate basically in the matter of 7 or 8 minutes. It didn't take very long. I mean, how much of it was UNM kind of maybe taking their foot off the gas, or how much of it was a kind of a strategic chess move on Bryce Drew's part? What did you see defensively from GCU that made it really challenging on UNM in the second half?
I thought they did a good job of getting physical with the Lobos defensively, but I thought more than anything, offensively they were like a buzzsaw. It was really difficult for the Lobos to stay in front of them and to get that gap help that they needed to keep people out of the lane. And I thought for about the first 8 minutes of the second half, GCU did a great job, and as a result, they also got offensive rebounds. If you look at the stat sheet for the second half, I think they doubled up the Lobos rebounding wise. I think the Lobos had 11 rebounds in the first half and GCU had 22. But when I'm sitting here watching the game, I was so nervous about them getting a defensive rebound when GCU had all that momentum, and you were worried about whether the Lobos could stop that at any point in that second half. And they were fortunate in the last 5 minutes they were able to do that. But I thought GCU came out offense and defensively very physical. They played downhill on offense. They got off to a great start. I think one of their Achilles heels is they continued to try to shoot 3-pointers when it wasn't falling for them, pretty much for the entire game. 4 of 25 is not a very good percentage. So I think that helped the Lobos in some regard.
Some of those possessions you talked about on the 3-pointers, Owusu and Nane, I thought took some terrible ones. I really did. They weren't even close. Mekhi Williams was 1 of 9. So I think they shoot 16% from 3, and they said New Mexico held them to that percentage. I thought some of those shots were just terrible. I really did. Owusu and Nane helped UNM down the stretch by they weren't. Coach, you were a heck of a corner shooter, a really good outside shooter. I always say the back heel on the back heel on the heel of the rim. Those are ones that I felt good about when I shot them. Okay, but if they're like on the side of the rim, your mechanics are way off. And I thought Owusu and Nane really helped UNM with some of those possessions down the stretch for GC were not good, and that helped UNM too. That did, and they were able to pull that out. I want to ask you, they didn't get much bench production. Tenet 5, Miller 5. They only got Rock had 2, I believe. No, Rock had 4. So they didn't get much bench production. 14 points off the bench. Is that a concern to you? Miller's been hot and cold. He's they do miss Chris Howell. It doesn't look like he's coming back. Coach had mentioned that last week that by with the time they have left, it's going to be tough to ramp him up to get in condition. It doesn't look like he's coming back. Looks like they're going to have to go with what they have. Does that concern you with the bench production or lack of that they had the other night?
A little bit. As a season wears on, you often, people don't always factor in fatigue. If you think about the Lobos a couple of years ago when they had some talented perimeter players, but they weren't big. They're not big guys, and they had very little bench help. And towards the end of the season, they kind of tanked a little bit as a result of fatigue. And then they upgraded the next year with True Washington and those guys and got a little bigger and got a little more depth on the perimeter. And that made a difference for them down the stretch. But sometimes that fatigue factor sets in. I kind of felt a little bit of that in the Utah State game. It was almost like the sugar high, sugar low that, little kids get. And Eric, you might be familiar with this since you got some young ones, but I almost felt like that the night against Utah State where they were a little too high and then performance went way down and they just looked kind of tired to me. Like they were watching skip passes and not closing out as well as they've done all year. They've played great defense all year. I felt like their help defense and their on-ball defense has been great all year. So sometimes that's a factor. I'm hoping it's not. Maybe Vicente needs to play a little bit more. He had a good showing earlier in the year. I think Tenet got in foul trouble in the GCU game early and never really got a rhythm. He every time he went in, he got a foul. I think he went in for 8 or 10 seconds and got a foul at one point and came right back out. So I'm not too worried about that. I think he gives them a spark off the bench, and he's had some great games. But they may have to add Vicente a little bit to down the stretch to give people a blow. And I think he's certainly a more than serviceable reserve there.
It's kind of funny. We haven't seen him. He had 19 points and 7 rebounds. And the last time he was ready to play too. Sometimes, Coach, with guys that haven't played, man, their game isn't together. And that guy was ready. That guy was ready to play. And I think that's a good point. Maybe down the stretch, they do give him some time because he's a guy. There's trust guys, right? He's a trust guy. We trust him. He's going to make the right play. And I think you made a good point about Jake Hall and Luke Hopt. They're not going to. Jake Hall doesn't force a lot of shots. A couple here and there he has, but he's not hunting for me shots. They run stuff for him. He takes what's there, gives a fake, goes to the line, gets it done. Smart player. But I gotta ask you this. This is what the Lobos have left: Air Force at home, at Fresno State, at Nevada, at Utah State. So they've got some Air Force at home. That should be one that they can win pretty easy. At Fresno State, they beat Fresno State pretty easy here. At Nevada, and then San Diego State here, the 28th of February, which is going to be a 12 noon game. I understand it's already sold out. And then at Utah State. What's your opinion of what the Lobos need to do going down the stretch, man, to get that bid? and then there's the Mountain West tournament. Are they going to have to win the tournament to get a bid? What's your opinion?
Well, I think they can do well down this last stretch. I even think they've got a shot at Utah State, which a lot of people may not think that because of what happened here with them. But I thought Utah State probably played the best second half of basketball that they've played all year here at the Pit, and I don't think the Lobos played their best basketball. So I think that's going to be a tight one at Utah State. I think the game at Nevada is going to be a tough one, but I think the Lobos match up very well with Nevada, and I think they'll do well against Air Force and Fresno State. So I think they got a shot. Predicting whether they're in or what bids they may get or is difficult because that thing changes every day. Last four in, first four out.
Yeah.
All those types of things change dramatically. But if they can get that quad one, they have opportunity to get two more quad one wins at Nevada and at Utah State. I think that would get them in for sure.
All things considered, Ray, you know what? A new coach, Pitino left with his 20 wins in a row, 2 straight NCAA tournaments, which is around here is, we're still waiting for that Sweet 16. We're still waiting for that. But all things considered, I think people should be pretty pleased with the season that Eric Olin. I saw some guy make a comment the other day, like, "Oh, he's getting out coached." It's like, oh my God, and he said it after was it the Utah State game, Eric, that he got out coached. I think it was the Utah State game. He faced everybody in the press conference and said, "I got out coached, man. We got outplayed." And he looked everybody in the eye and said that he wasn't mean or mad or surly or cut people off. Like, I don't know. He
was humble.
Yeah. He looked you in the face and said, "I got out coached, man." So all things considered, Ray, for a Lobo first year coach, man, going back to King and Ellenberger, Alford, McKay, Bliss, Frischella, all of them, man. I think he's having a pretty darn good first year.
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, is that for him to put together an entirely new team, which may be to his benefit that he gets an opportunity to do that. But how hard is that to say, I need a guy like this here, I need a guy like that there. This is the type of team I need to build and, infuse the chemistry part of that. He's done a phenomenal job. I mean, I think Richard Pitino was 13-17 his first year,
right?
Something like that. People forget all those types of things, but we know how difficult it is to build a program and what the expectations are here. Sometimes they're unreasonable. They're not fair, but that's the nature of the beast in college sports nowadays. So I think he's done an incredible job, and I can't remember anybody in a Lobo coaching position that's done a better job in their first year.
Well, I think one of the things you mentioned is life's a fishbowl here, man. As a Lobo fan, and hey, we love our Lobos, we do. But there's some people that as soon as he lost a couple, are like, oh, the Wolves came out again, and I don't know that I could have expected 18 wins, or he's probably going to get 20 wins for a first year coach, and that's way. And the other thing is, I don't know that we get Fernando Lobo's gone to Colorado, and he's here, and in a blink of an eye, he's gone. But he hired 2 darn good coaches, and Jason Eck and Eric Olin. He did. And those are 2 of the best hires we've ever had here in a very, very long time. And since he's gone, we don't remember that because he was only here for such a short time. But those coaches there could have a big, big impact for years to come. But Coach, you and I both know this, man. Things have changed at the collegiate level. With the money they're paying NIL and coaches. I got into a discussion with one guy, and he said they should never pay the players. Okay, but these coaches are making astronomical salaries and bolting whenever they want to, man. Now, should something be done as far as regulating the pay, what they get? Maybe. You got JT Toppin at $4 million. He's not even the kid from BYU's making $7 million. So I don't know if it's out of control or not. But I think Olin's got people speculate about Hall. Is he going to leave? He's going to want a bag. He's pretty close to Olin, man. He's pretty connected to Olin. So hopefully that'll help keep him. But real quick, what's your opinion about NIL, Coach? You saw a time. We have to laugh though, Coach. They said Norm was paying people under the table for a long time, man, back in the day. I don't know if that's true or not, but they said that. But what's your opinion of all these NIL things?
Well, it's certainly the cat's out of the bag, and how do you get that back to a reasonable level? I do think they should get paid. I really do. I mean, and I'm an old school guy, but I think the amount of money they're getting paid and what's the transactional agreements that are taking place throughout the country every year, guys playing at 3-4 different colleges. I think we've lost some things there about the student athlete and some of the benefits that they get from being a student athlete. I mean, what does this do to a guy who's making millions of dollars playing college sports? Is he still part of the campus community and the kids that go to school there with him? And those experiences were valuable for kids as well. I just think there needs to be some type of a limit. I don't know how they do that in a capitalistic society where it's allowed now. I think that's the question is how do you regulate it so that it's fair for everybody?
The other people that were, that might be regulated, they mentioned Congress, and the Congress has their hands out too, man, lobbyists. So I don't know who's going to regulate it. They even mentioned the president getting involved, and I doubt that. But it's crazy when you see a kid from BYU making $7 million. JT Toppin, good for him, making $4 million. Donovan Dent, $3 million. If the market's going to pay them that, enjoy it. Because some of these guys will never make that kind of money ever. They won't. But I think one of the points you made about student athletes is true. Are you going to get 4 years out of these players the way King did and Norm did and all the other Lobo coaches? Can you plan on 4 years? Probably not. Eric, you got anything left?
Yeah, I got a few more questions for Coach. A quick comment before I do, though, on the whole NIL talk. I think at some point the whole conversation or the regulation piece of it has to incorporate some protection for the universities and the athletic programs, the basketball programs that are investing time and money, the fans that are investing time into the collectives and supporting the Lobo clubs of the world, right? Because you're paying a kid X amount of money to come here, you're investing for the future, and then they could just at the end of the season pick up and go, and there's no repercussion. There's no safety net. So I think there's got to be some kind of buyout clause, or there's got to be and how it works with the World Soccer regulation, right? If another program calls and wants to get one of your players, then there's got to be some compensation back to that program financially to kind of fill that void. So it's not like we're just paying these athletes getting up to a certain tier and then they bolt whenever they feel like they're going to get the next highest paycheck. So that I think it's got to reach a point like that because it's just going to, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to continue to widen. And right now the Lobos are kind of right in the middle of all that. So it's going to level the playing field a little bit. And I don't think we're going to have a resolution next year or even in the next 5 years, but as it happens more and more and more, I think there's going to be some protection put in place for some of the universities and the athletic departments. But enough of that talk. I want to talk more about basketball and just pick Coach Rodriguez's brain here because I actually really enjoy this conversation. But Coach, for our viewers and listeners, they might not understand, but the 40 years that you have coached, the different personalities, the athletes, the players that have come through your program are all different in their own way. I mean, you've actually coached some great ones. Alan Branch was a really good player. He ended up going to Michigan on a full ride football scholarship, ended up playing in the NFL for, I'm not sure if it was more than 10 years, but really successful NFL career. You talked about Jude Roybal. I want to say he played was it Sam Houston State?
He actually played at New Hampshire for a year.
New Hampshire, that's what. Okay, so really good point guard. I mentioned Ramon Andrade. He played at Highlands. He played at JUCO level, and I think he played professionally in Mexico for a really long time. So you've had a lot of high profile, really good, not only basketball players, but athletes come through, right? And there's the whole mental side and kind of shaping the way these young men think and how they play and how to kind of get the best out of them. Focusing on a player like Antonio Chol, who's got, from what we see just kind of on the outside, the 6'9" frame, NBA body, ball handling skills, can shoot it from the outside, and he gets a lot of heat. And we've given it on this show. I'm really critical of his game, and it's kind of just maybe what he focuses on or maybe what he's not doing. From your perspective as a coach, for as long as you've been doing it, I don't feel like he's reached his ceiling yet. Now, how do you shape or get your message across to a player like that to kind of elevate his play? Because Olin's been working on trying to maximize his output, right? Like, how do you get through to a player like that? And I mean, what's your impression of his game and how does he get to the next level? Because I think it's very important that if the Lobos were to go on a run, win out the conference, maybe 3 or 4 days in the Mountain West tournament and try to get into the field of 64 or 68, he's going to be a main component to that. What's your take on Antonio Chol?
I agree with you 100%. I think I remember asking Ryan Berryman, who was down the row from us, watching the Lobos early in the season, and I said, "How big is this Chol kid?" And he said, "He's 6'9". And I said, "Man, he is got an upside like nobody's business." I was really impressed with him the first 4 or 5 games, and then he kind of fell off. But I think from a coaching standpoint, it's delicate. It's delicate because I think Chol's mental, I guess his framework is a little bit different. And most athletes, you're going to get a team like that. They have different personalities. They have different competitive levels. They have some kids get down easy when they don't play well, and you have to keep them up. And I think Coach Olin's doing a great job of that balance, that delicateness that it takes to bring a kid along like that. Like Ed mentioned, he had 1 rebound, and you're saying, well, this guy's 6'9". He's a really slight build as well. And that makes it easy for opponents to shove him around in the post and in the paint when rebound time comes around. Because as we all know, when the shot goes up, a lot of people don't really watch what's going on in the lane, and it's physical. It's physical. It's almost violent at times. And I think he's going to get better in all those aspects. He reminds me a little bit of Tony Snell and how he came along. He came around as well. They knew he had a tremendous upside. He was a prototypical NBA guy with size and skill level, but it took him a while to come around to get that aggressiveness and to really take games over. And I just think it's a delicate process with some athletes. You got to bring them along, and it's not an overnight process.
Yeah, so we got to temper our patience a little bit there. Then
I think he's starting to come out of it a little bit. Yeah,
I think so. I think the upside's there. It's pretty obvious to me because we've seen him do it, and it's like, man, if he just were to be a little more assertive, a little more aggressive, get downhill, get into the lane. He had a nice move. He penetrated. He kind of stopped, turned around, and hit a nice little fadeaway. I don't know, 5-7 feet away from the basket. And it's like, man, if you just do that more often, or at least take more chances like that. It's like this. The roof or the ceiling for this guy is astronomical because of the size, because of the NBA frame. Last question here for you, Coach, and then I'll hand it over to Ed if he wants to wrap up any final thoughts. But there in the second half, GCU makes their strong run. You mentioned the physicality, the aggressiveness on the defensive side, which got GCU back in the game. It went back and forth. There were about 6 lead changes there in the last couple minutes. There was a timeout called, and then Coach Eric Olin ends up changing his defense and went zone, which we haven't seen this Lobo team do at all, if much, ever this whole season. Changed the complete outlook. I think GCU scored 2 points in the final 6 minutes, 11 seconds. I think that move is what won them the game. Can you break down that for me, just from your kind of coaching background on changing that up? And it's kind of a risk, right? Your team hasn't played too much zone, and to make a call like that, how big was that in that moment?
I thought it was a huge move. They needed something to change the momentum. They needed something to stop GCU from getting in the lane as easy and as fiercely as they were doing it. They were really attacking the basket with great confidence. And I thought it was a bold move for them to go 2-3, but it really changed momentum. I thought their shifts in the 2-3 were really nice. If I recall correctly, I thought Bouillon went from the center position on that 2-3 zone out to the corner when they needed a long shift. And I think he did that twice. And I think it really bothered GCU and kept them from looking to the low block because they may have had something there. And then the two guards up top did a great job of just switching off that ball screen. And it really forced them to take some tough threes as well, which they weren't doing well anyway. And I think that was probably the calculation. It's like, hey, they're not shooting from three well, but they're getting downhill on us. Let's do something to keep our help in place, and we'll take our chances with the three.
Ed, any final thoughts? That's good strategies. You turn, as you mentioned, Ray, making them go. They're 4-25. Let them shoot those. They were not, and some of the threes we mentioned were not good ones, not at all. In fact, when they shot them, I'm like, that's good for UNM. Coach, you've been great. Thanks so much again for joining us. But I want to ask, so you let everybody know, you did Farmington and Volcano Vista with me on the other night, and Farmington gave them a good show, man. They did. Volcano ranked number 3, 4-time defending champions there. Share what your feelings were about state tournaments coming up, Coach. District tournament will be here before you know it. That's how quick it goes. Share your thoughts about what you saw with Volcano Vista the other night, the 3 4-time defending champions.
Well, I think the obvious one is Lund. The kid pretty much took over the game in the second half. It was difficult to stop. But I thought Farmington did a good job of controlling tempo for 3 quarters of that game. And when the Sarters kid got hurt and went down, and he was really effective in that 4-out, 1-in, and he's 6'4", 220 pounds, and handles the ball well. Left-handed, really crafty down low. I thought he was a key factor in that game until he got, once he got hurt. I think it forced Farmington to change things. It eliminated a big in the post defensively, and the Lund kid really went crazy after that. So, but I think there's a lot of parity this year in 5A basketball from what I've seen so far. I mean, Cleveland's pretty good, and Volcano's pretty good, and I know there's some other teams that I'm not thinking about right now, but
yeah, Rancho's pretty good.
Rio Rancho absolutely is very good. So I think it's going to be an interesting state tournament for sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Eric, I've got nothing else.
Nope, just want to say thank you to Coach Ray Rodriguez again for joining us here in the Pit Press, and brilliant basketball mind. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed our conversation. Coach Ray Rodriguez, coaching experience spans over 40 total years. Coached at Highland High School from 84 to 1994. 7 of those years he was the head coach. And then, coaching at Eastlake High School in the Washington State area for 4 years. Ended up coming back to Albuquerque to coach Cibola High School for 24 years and was an athletic director for part of that time. Coach Ray, we appreciate your time, man. Appreciate your knowledge, your love for the game. Thanks again for joining us here in the Pit Press.
I appreciate you guys having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. And that'll do it for another live episode of the Pit Press Live. Look for our content later on down the week. We'll probably recap and break down the Air Force game. Ed, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Tomorrow night, tune in for Abby Pavia. My son and I will have our first Road to the Pit show, and it should be a good one. We're looking forward to talking to her.
Looking forward to that, too. You guys know where to find us. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Pit Press Live.